Honestly, at this point, if there is one guarantee in college football, it's that at least once a month when you pick up the newspaper, there is another Georgia football player who's up to some sort of nonsense with a car. Whether it's a crash, an arrest, or just something stupid, Georgia football has developed a reputation for having a ridiculous amount of car incidents to the point where it's laughable, and some are wondering how it's still possible to even be happening. I mean, literally, they have had some crazy instances these last couple of months, and I believe over the last couple of years there have been 18 incidents to Georgia football players messing up with cars. In today's video, I'm going to go through this. We're going to talk about why Georgia keeps having all these crazy car incidents, go through each and every one of them, and my thoughts on what the heck needs to happen from here. But before we get started, if you're a big fan of college football, be sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like if you want to support today's video, and let me know what player, team, topic, or situation I can cover next. Now let's get started and talk about Georgia football in cars. So yeah, Georgia football players have been involved in a handful of vehicle incidents over the last couple of years, with a lot of them being significant or pretty serious, and a few of them involving serious damage to property, people, or cars. The most significant of them all was the one that started it. It was right after Georgia's national championship in the January of 2023 period. On January 13th of that year, offensive lineman Devin Willock and staffer Chandler LaCroix actually were killed in a vehicle accident when they were speeding down a road that was listed as a speed limit of 40 miles per hour. Reports stated that they believed the car was going well over 100 miles per hour at the time of the crash, and Chandler, who was driving, had a blood alcohol content of 0.197. They jumped a curb and hit multiple light poles. Devin wasn't wearing a seatbelt, and he and Chandler were killed, while another offensive lineman, Warren McClendon, and another staffer were also seriously injured. A few weeks later, in late February, linebacker Jamon Dumas Johnson was arrested for street racing in an event that happened on January 10th of 2023. He was street racing another car on the road in Athens at high speeds and tried to flee when police officers showed up. Since the arrest took place after the deaths of Devin and Chandler, the optics for Georgia were really bad. What made it worse was he was Georgia's best linebacker at the time and was the frontrunner for the Butkus Award. But it wasn't the only problem that month, as he said, quote, "I definitely don't think it's a culture that we've created. Just some bad choices that we're making right now, and hopefully the team will get it together." Shortly after that, an offensive lineman was arrested for going 65 and a 45 and was given 12 months probation. Wide receiver Denylon Morissette was stopped later that same week after going 81 and a 45, and I can't tell if it was the same street or not, but if it was, it's truly a huge mistake. But before the month was over, edge rusher Marvin Jones Jr. was then caught going 93 miles per hour in a 65 mile per hour zone, and by this point, the media knew that Georgia had some pretty big problems in terms of speeding. Then in March, right before the NFL draft, it came out that Jalen Carter was involved in a car crash that took the lives of Devin and Chandler. Originally, it was thought that the car crash was a single car crash and no one else was involved, but later evidence showed that Jalen was racing the people in the other car and driving between random citizens and driving well over the speed limit while doing so. After the crash, instead of staying around to help the people who were injured, he reportedly left the area. He was released before the NFL draft and went in the first round to the Eagles. Later that month, defensive lineman Christian Miller and running back Kendall Milton were both stopped for speeding in separate incidents on the same day. Christian was going 95 at a 65, and Kendall was going 79 in a 65. Denylon Morissette kept getting in trouble once the calendar year ticked to May, as he was stopped after going 91 in a 65 and later arrested on charges of DUI and possession. He was also driving on a restricted license on May 8th. In the same month of May, another receiver by the name of Marcus Rosemay Jacksaint was caught going 90 miles per hour on the highway and was arrested by a state trooper. He was the fourth arrest of a Bulldog player made that offseason. By the month of June in 2023, it was reported that since the fatal crash on January 10th, 10% of all traffic-related incidents or citations involved Bulldog football players. It had become a huge problem for Georgia. The athletic department had to make a post addressing the car issues, saying that anyone who they thought would tolerate this behavior is categorically false. They said our coaches and administrators are deeply disappointed by the persistence of reckless driving and other misbehaviors. Head coach Kirby Smart said, quote, "We'll continue to do all we can as a university to make sure they behave and do that in a proper way." But as you guys know, it did not stop. On July 6th, freshman linebacker Samuel Mpemba was ticketed after driving 88 miles per hour in a 55 mile per hour zone. Ironically, just an hour before, Marcus Rosemay Jacksaint was set for his court appearance for that speeding case. On March 28th, edge rusher Tyron Ingrid Dawkins was arrested after he was cited for speeding over 20 miles per hour over the speed limit and failed to appear for a previous citation. Georgia then went without any incidents in the entirety of the 2023 college football season, so there were thoughts that they had actually managed to improve as a program and did not have any more issues. Georgia had recently announced that any player who got involved in a car-related crime was going to be suspended one game in the upcoming season. But that peace was short-lived, as in February of 2024, defensive backs Jonel Aguero and Justin Rhett were cited street racing each other at close to 20 miles per hour over the limit on February 16th. When he pulled them over, an officer reportedly had to remind Jonel that there were families and other vehicles he was swerving around. He said, quote, "This isn't your racetrack." In late March of 2024, standout running back Trevor Etienne, who had just transferred in from Florida, drove while drunk and was charged with reckless driving and a DUI. An officer noticed him make a hard stop at a traffic light and followed him for a bit. Then he started speeding, passed another car on a double yellow, and kept swerving between the lanes of traffic. He told the officer he was just, quote, trying to get home and didn't want to do any sobriety test, but the officer knew he was drunk because his eyes were glazed and he kept swaying back and forth and slurring his words. He was arrested and spent an hour at jail before he posted bail. Coach Smart still said, quote, "I can only speak for my university, but I think we do driver safety education better than anybody in the country." I almost laughed as I'm reading this. On May 19th, wide receiver Sokovie White was arrested after driving the wrong way down a one-way road and then driving recklessly at 3 a.m. in the morning. Over a month later, two different players, including offensive lineman Bo Hughley and linebacker Smail Munden, were arrested on the same day, July 10th, for completely separate traffic incidents. Hughley lost control of his car on a curve and completely lost one of his tires and his front bumper in the crash. Cornerback Ellis Johnson was with him at the time, and both players were interviewed by police, where they said they had been driving the speed limit, but Bo didn't have his driver's license with him, and there were clearly visible tire tracks on the road leading to the car that hinted he was going way over the speed limit that was 25 miles per hour. Bo was arrested for reckless driving and failure to maintain a lane. Munden's incident resulted in charges later being dismissed, but the fact that it happened on the same day was another bad look for Georgia. It was another case of street racing, where Smail was racing defensive back Demilo Jones. He was caught changing lanes at a high rate of speed and did not slow down when he saw the officer. He was charged with street racing and reckless driving, going 75 and a 45. When he was pulled over, he told the officer he had no idea who DeMello was, but DeMello had pulled over behind them to tell the officer that he was checking up on his teammate, exposing his lie. DeMello wasn't arrested because he slowed down for the cop, but he was given a ticket. As he was being arrested, Smail apparently told DeMello not to say anything in a Georgia group chat. Things were quiet for a little while after that, until September of 2024, when cornerback Daniel Harris got arrested for 5 driving-related charges all at once. An officer caught him going 106 miles per hour, and then when he was pulled over, he was charged with reckless driving, not wearing a seatbelt, operating an unregistered vehicle that didn't have a license plate, driving without proof of insurance, and having illegally reduced window visibility. Most of those are misdemeanors, and he was arrested immediately after being pulled over, though he was released later that night. Then we get to this past month. Offensive lineman Marquise Easley was arrested on March 21st after he crashed his car into an apartment complex on the 17th. According to reports, he was speeding and recklessly swerving between cars before he fishtailed out of control, hitting a few other cars. When officers showed up, he lied and said he had been driving the speed limit, but there were clear tire marks on the road from him speeding. Another player, corner Andre Evans, was also with him at the time, and both players were amongst the 6 people listed with injuries. Then we got to our most recent incident a couple of weeks ago, as on March 19th, receiver Nitro Tuggle was driving at over 107 miles per hour in a 65 mile per hour zone when he was pulled over by police. He was apparently so intoxicated at the time that he almost left the vehicle to talk to the officers before he put the car in park. He was arrested for reckless driving and suspended by Coach Smart, and Kirby said, quote, "As far as the process we've followed, it's not been several months. You know, it's been several years in terms of defensive driving courses, having players ride and learn how to drive, just like my 2 kids did with a driver's license." Again, I'm trying to hold back from laughing at this point reading all this. So why on earth does this keep happening? College football players do get arrested a lot, and it isn't all the time, but they do get arrested a lot, and the simple reason for it is because they're still kids who can be reckless and make dumb decisions. A lot of the guys who make the bad decisions are also really good football players, since they see themselves getting a lot of attention, and maybe the NIL or the power that goes to their head a bit. If you remember, Baker Mayfield got arrested twice before the 2017 season, which was his senior year at Oklahoma, and the same time he won the Heisman. But at some point, it has to circle back to the guy at the top of it all, and that's head coach Kirby Smart. Georgia didn't have any issues with driving to this level before he was hired as head man, and he has many ways of stopping this from happening, or at least happening at the level it does now. One-game suspensions and mandatory driving courses are not stopping new players from driving recklessly and putting both themselves and others in danger. The fact that it only got worse after a player and staffer died tell me that Coach Smart hasn't taken these issues seriously enough. Jamon Dumas Johnson even said himself that there was a unique driving culture at Georgia that isn't present at any other university in the country, and it's a dangerous culture that's gotten a lot of people hurt. He may not have started or created that dangerous culture, but Coach Smart hasn't done enough to prevent it from happening or getting worse. He won't be fired because he's one of the best coaches in the country, but if Coach Smart wants to keep Georgia away from being one of the most notorious bad cultures in sports, he needs to act harshly and severely now to prevent any more accidents or any more lives being lost. Again, this video is absolutely nuts, as I had no idea it was this bad. I knew everyone kind of jokes about how Georgia players are always getting arrested, but truly, this is unbelievable. At some point, I'm beginning to think this is some sort of joke or some sort of rehearsed skit, because it just continues to happen. I'm sure it'll happen again in the coming weeks, and I think the most interesting part of all this is not one of these players has really had to pay for it. Yes, 2 people lost their lives, but out of all these incidents, most of them just get a slap on the wrist, it seems. That's probably not going to do anything for their long-term good, and I hope they end up figuring it out. But what do you guys think? If you're a Georgia fan, why do you think this keeps happening, and what do you think has to be done to stop this? Be sure to let me know down in the comment section below, leave a like if you want to support today's video, subscribe if you're new, and check out all my other videos on the end screen. Hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.